Hey guys, this is Rutten, the bass player for Rogue Royal, Machic Fever, and Out of Line, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of my current equipment I'm using. So to start things off, I'm going to talk about this Dingwall NG2 I play. It's one of my main basses I use for Rogue Royal. I was really inspired by Nolly from Periphery. This is his signature bass, and I found this video of him playing one of their songs called Prayer Position, and I was just absolutely blown away by the tone. Cool thing about this bass is it is multi-scale, as you can see. The G string is a normal bass scale length, and every string it gets a little bit longer. The reason I really enjoy this is because I'm able to down tune this thing quite a bit. I currently play it in drop B with a low F sharp below it for a lot of Rogue Royals tunes. I wound up doing quite a few mods of this thing. Wound up swapping out the pickguard just to kind of make it a little bit more my own. The pickguard it currently had was very distinctly a signature model, and so I upgraded this with Hipshot Ultralight USA models and the bridge as well. The main reason I did that was because I found the saddles that were on the bridge really sharp and painful, because I like to do a lot of palm muty kind of style playing, and I wound up just upgrading these and getting the Canadian model knobs on it, and I basically just ripped out all the electronics of it to make it strictly passive. So if you guys are thinking about picking one of these up and might be a little scared of the multi-scale fan fret system they have, it's definitely not something to be scared of. Once you play it for about like 10-15 minutes, you kind of naturally get used to it. One of the things I really like about the fan frets is how tight each string can be. Having this extra scale length really helps get that retention, so you're able to tune it down. Like, I have this thing tuned down to F sharp 0, and it is more clear than a lot of my 5 strings B strings in standard, which is pretty miraculous. Strings I'm running on this current bass right now are Payson stainless steel round wounds. The lowest gauge is all the way down to 160 gauge. I typically will play flat wounds on most of my basses. So if anyone has any recommendations for a company that can make long scale 160 gauge strings, comment below and let me know. So one of the first basses I wanted to talk about is this Fender American Deluxe 5-string. I was typically playing Music Man. I had a Stingray and a bongo. I picked this up from my buddy at a really good deal, and I've pretty much have not put it down since. As you can tell, I've become quite a Fender endorser recently. Some mods I made to this one was I added some Fender Noiseless 3 pickups in it. Kind of looks goofy because I got some gaff tape across it, but I was having kind of an issue with my strings touching the pull pieces and it making kind of a ugly clicking sound that really did not do well in a live setting or recording or anything for that matter. It was very annoying, but that was a simple fix I found to fix that. Same thing as my white bass. I got 2 input jacks on it, and it is strictly passive, and right now I have Ernie Ball Slinky round wounds on it. Like I said, I typically play flat wounds, but I was looking for a little bit of variety in what I'm doing and more consistency with swapping basses, so I wound up not playing my Music Man anymore, and now I have 4 jazz basses that are pretty much the same thing, but different tunings, different strings, just to kind of get the sounds I'm going for. So right now I got rounds on this. I don't typically play live for the most part, but there's definitely a lot of music that is better served with round wounds, like heavy distortion. Like when I'm at home playing Dance Gavin Dance or things like that, I'll definitely pick up this one always. So the next bass I will talk about is this American Ultra Fender jazz bass. This is the main bass I use for Rogue Royal for everything that is in drop C sharp or half step down. I have Ernie Ball Cobalt flats on this bass. I've been using these for about 3 years now, and I wound up taking the leap to try flat wounds randomly and kind of was scared because I wasn't sure if they could handle our kind of heavy rock metal kind of style music we do. I found the body of the flat wounds, it was a way more massive tone for me, and I can get a lot of that brightness, snappiness with the Cobalt models that Ernie Ball provides. They're a little bit brighter than a typical flat wound, and I was kind of struggling with strings dying maybe after 3 or 4 weeks. Like, they'd be fine, but a lot of that high end disappears pretty quick. But I found with these flat wounds, I can make it a couple months, maybe 3 months before I kind of feel like I need to change them. So that saved me a little bit of money, and that's been nice. So mods I did to this, I swapped out the pickguard just to match my ding wall, just to kind of have a little aesthetic for Rogue Royal. As you can see with my amps as well in the background, I've really enjoyed the white vibe. And then I had my good friend Todd Grangs of Simple Man Guitars. He helped me with a lot of modifications I was kind of going for with this thing. I wound up ripping out the active electronics, as I tend to do with a lot of my basses, and one of the really cool things he did was he installed a second input jack for me. The whole idea kind of started with me kind of getting a little annoyed with the side input jack, and you know, I have a straight cable, or even if it's round, I can, if I move my bass around, I could like clip my leg, and then that might damage the input jack. And I'm a bass player that really likes to play with a lot of energy and move around the stage, and that was kind of getting in my way. So I got an Ultra, a Deluxe, and this is my Elite that I recently picked up. And what I did was I took it apart and I wound up getting the body painted just to kind of do something that was kind of speaking to me. It's called the Iris Mist finish, and eventually over time it's definitely going to wear because it's not a poly paint job, and nitro tends to wear quite a bit easier like most of the old vintage guitars did, and I thought that'd be kind of a cool thing. And got a couple of little tweaks I got to do. Got to get that second input jack installed just because I think that is a very fun idea, and if I ever were to go out at a show, I have a backup. So I really liked when Todd came up with that idea for me. So my only 4-string. The really fun thing about this is it took me maybe like a month or two to realize, but it has a factory misprint on it. On the neck it says it's a Jaguar bass. So I kind of was like not really sure what to do with it. I called the Fender shop and I found out that it was just a factory misprint. There was nothing different about it. They're asking me if I wanted a different neck that was saying the correct thing, but I don't know. I couldn't resist to keep it because I like to call it my Fender Jaguar. But it just kind of made it a little more unique, so I kind of like that it happened that way. Last bass I have, I could not resist this. It was definitely not in the budget, but one of my favorite bass players is Pino Palladino. And this isn't like a signature model or anything, but it's a American Standard P bass from 2011. The guy that I bought it from did the same thing I did with my Iris Mist guitar, and he got it refinished into nitro, and it is a Fiesta Red, and it looks exactly like Pino's bass, with the exception it's a 5-string, not a 4. So I think the stars really aligned there, and I couldn't resist. Cool thing about it, it's probably going to change, but it has vintage Novak pickups, and for the tone knob, it has this Stellar Tone tone styler in it, which is kind of cool. I think I might switch it to be more consistent with what I have in the other basses. But it has like a 5-way selector where you can get a little bit of a different mid-frequency. So with this thing having a 5-way switch, it's very easy to get the exact same spot you had from the previous night. So that's pretty cool. And I also really felt like I really wanted a P bass just because that's a classic recording instrument that you find in the studio since the beginning of time. So I'm going to talk about my amp setup I have here. The first amp I ever bought was this little Fender Rumble 75 just to get started. But within maybe 5 months, I wound up calling my mom and kind of seeing if it was a bad idea to pull a credit card out just to get exactly what I wanted right off the bat. And for some reason, she supported that decision. And the first cab I ever bought was right here. It got pretty beat up, so I thought it'd be cool to get some white Tolix on it. And then I wound up buying a twin to it and doing the same thing just because lugging these things around is not fun. They're pretty heavy, and I like to keep one in the trailer, one at home for whatever reason I'm needing. And then the first amp I wound up buying was a Ampeg SVT7 Pro, and I played that for a number of years, but it wound up dying on me, and I've tried a few others, and they kind of both had the same problem. So I wound up purchasing this Dark Glass Microtubes 900 V2. I've been rolling with that amp for about 4 years now, and I've never had an issue with it. It's a very consistent amp, and I think a cool thing about it is it has a built-in compressor if you want it. I don't use it live, but if I'm at home, I like to throw that on because compressors are the most essential effect that you can have on a bass to keep your levels consistent and all that jazz. Having that built in the amp is really cool, and it also has a two voicing distortion built into it as well. So if I ever felt like I needed to get some grit and I didn't have my pedal board at home, it is all there. But yeah, other than that, in my rack, I got a Furman power conditioner, just so I have surge protection and a number of plugs right at my access. Like I will keep my iPad on top of my amp for controlling our in-ear through a M32. So having a plug for that and then powering my amp and all the other things in my rack has been very helpful. The two things above that are two Sennheiser units. One of them is for my wireless guitar and the other is for my in-ears. And I've been rolling with those for quite a while and they've been very reliable for me. So the next thing I can talk about is my pedal board. My bandmate Calvin showed me this cool idea to drill the base of a mic stand into it so I don't have to have a separate mic stand, and that's been really wildly helpful, especially if you're playing some dive bar with a really tiny stage. First thing in my chain is a Peterson strobe tuner. I ran into a problem when I started tuning down almost an entire octave and the tuner's not picking it up. This tuner, I've gotten down to F-sharp 0 and I've never had a problem. I'm kind of curious how low I can go with it. Next to my chain, I have an Electro Harmonix Micropog. You got options to go octave down, octave up, and I found that really useful with trying to recreate some synth sounds. So I like to run my dry all the way up, my sub octave all the way up, and then the upper octave about halfway. And I pair that with a distortion, and I can get some tones that can kind of replicate like a kind of B3 kind of big sound. So next to my chain, I have a Boss LS2. I purchased that a couple of years ago because I was kind of trying to eliminate my signal chain. You know, the more cables you have, the more signal degradation you can get. So what I do with it is I run it on the A-B channel. My A channel I use for all my cleans, and then my B channel I use for all my dirty stuff. I really don't like using compressors when I use distortion, so I was trying to think of a cool way to easily switch between the two, because there's songs where I might have my compressor on, a chorus pedal, maybe even a delay on top of that, and then I need to quickly change over to distortion. So that's 4 pedal clicks. I was trying to think of a way to do that easily. When I have my A channel, my compressor is always on, and then I will quick flip over and it's on my distortion that's already turned on, ready to go. And if I'm going back to something and I have another effect I need to throw on, I can pre-click that and then just hit my Boss LS2 and it's all there. So I'll start with the A side, I guess. First pedal in the chain is Origin Effects Cali 76 bass compressor. I wound up going to Diablo Guitars in Minneapolis and I saw one there and I tried it out, and although it's expensive, I couldn't resist. It's always on effect, so you don't really want to cheap out on that. So then next I go into a TCA Electronics Corona. I use choruses quite a bit when we're playing live, no matter what band I'm in. Sometimes that can really give you a little bit more atmosphere. Next in the chain, I got MXR Carbon Copy. Wasn't sure if I was going to use delay as a bass player. I actually weirdly found a way to make that work. When we do like that little breakdown down section of Fly From Here, I like to throw that on to kind of fill out the sound because it's a very atmospheric part. Then next in the chain, I have a TC Electronics Flashback 2. That pedal doesn't get used often, but it's more just an auxiliary effect. It has 9 different types of delays in it, and each one of them, if you hold a note, it might do something different. Like one of them does a long sustaining thing, so I could play it, hit that button, and if I needed to tune it, it would keep that note playing. But it has this really cool effect on I think the analog side, where the more I press on it, it'll kind of go crazy and make this big wall of sound. So then next in my chain, I will go to the B side. I just have 2 distortions currently. The main one I've been rolling with is the Tech 21 YYZ. That's a really cool distortion that's modeled after Geddy Lee. It's been a main distortion I've been using over the last year. The other distortion I have is a Dark Glass X7. The reason I picked that one up is because it has this really cool feature where you can select where the distortion kicks in with a low pass, high pass filter. And then you can dial in how high your drive is and then how loud your clean low end is. And that also compresses the low end of it. So You can get a lot of variety out of that. It can get really disgusting, it can get really clean, but having that low end while also being compressed is really helpful to get a massive sound and also keep your body of your bass, which is a really tough thing to come by. And then I run all of that through a powered by a True Tone CS12. Well, that about does it for my rig rundown. It's very subject to change, so you might see me back here in a year or so. I got some ideas, and we'll definitely catch you at a show coming up here. See ya.